Tubes. I love tubes. You know what I love almost more than tubes? Open baffles. So let's have a look at the journey. Alright, so I started here with the Lisong F15 drivers with these little tiny baffles made of a fancy hardwood. And they sounded good. Soundstage was a little bit low. And then I tried adding these big SVS subwoofers. I still had the Tektons at the time. And naturally, it sounded so good with single-ended amplifiers and tubes. This just further grew my love for tubes, whether it was 300Bs, 211 like you see in the screen here. As you can see also, I'm using fancy hockey pucks to remove the vibrations on these little pile dampeners, which I put the speakers on. And I also experimented by adding a fast 8, so they run in parallels, which led me to build these ugly monstrosities that are sitting on top of 2x4s, which was way too high. So this made the sound way too bright, little to no bass, everything was too high. So I removed the 2x4s and brought them down onto the carpet with little rubber pads. This sounded a lot better, but again, I think there was so many early reflections coming off the baffles. I think also because the drivers were too far apart, it led me to these, which look like cathedrals. This was significantly better, much better focus. The soundstage was a lot better, better resolution. But I couldn't stop there. I was like, okay, what if I reduced the reflections even more? Now I made these church-looking things, where the fast 8 again was up high, but now I removed too much of the baffles. It sounded too thin, too lean. So I re-added some of the material that I cut off and added a wing. This was actually really good. I was even able to use this with like super high-end gear, like the amplifier that's here on screen right now. It sounded really good. There was a great presence to the instruments. Even with the Dequer Zentori, this sounded tremendous, especially with Sophia tubes. It was fantastic. I had good resolution, good depth. But then I decided to learn a little bit more about sound staging. So this is where I experimented with Magnepans for a little bit. And oh my God, Magnepans for sound staging was incredible. So it gave me a good reminder and point of reference as to what the soundstage should be like or what it could be like, because Magnepans are champs at doing soundstage. So I spent a few months with the Magnepans, experimenting with positioning, and wow, these are great for sound staging. So now it gave me that point of reference of what I was striving for in terms of the soundstage and what I wanted. Now the next part was using the giant F-18s to make baffles. And I absolutely love the F-18s. I regret selling them, honestly, because today, as you'll see later on in the video, I would love to use the F-18 with my current revision of the Ladybugs, which you'll see later in the video. But the F-18s, man, these baffles sounded great. Huge imaging. Image was enormous. And surprising the most, I expected good bass, which there is good bass, but the detail and the resolution from an F-18 driver. It's 18 inches, ladies and gentlemen. This is massive. But the imaging was stellar. And I think that having an odd shape like the curved at the top of the baffle also helped. All right. And now the other game changer showed up. So the Lisong open baffles, the Leonidas Extreme. When Lisong brought me these speakers to evaluate and test for them, wow, I was introduced to the W15. So naturally what happens, I bought a pair of W15 bass drivers and I built these monstrosities using butcher blocks, big butcher blocks. And I even got to try the fast 15s, which are amazing, really fast, very detailed. Now, these were really good. I absolutely love these. However, this is where I learned that sharing a baffle with bass drivers that are as powerful as these W15s set up in this way. Now, I'm sure I could slot load the bass driver, the W15s, and that would help tame it, which is what actually the ABX audiophile baffles, I think, do with the La Dolce Audio 18-inch driver. And it works really well. But at the time, I didn't know about the slot loading and that I could do that. So at this point, I decided, you know what? Let me split this baffle up. And I did. So I split the baffle up using metal brackets in the back with rubber gaskets to minimize the vibrations. And wow, this made a huge difference. This made the full-range driver at the top shine way more because it wasn't hurting from all the vibrations of the W15. Just amazing. And I know that there's all these rules, like I know like GR Research has all his, set of rules for his open baffle speakers and whatnot, and he would say that these are way too wide. Man, I gotta tell you, my walls disappeared with this. It was spectacular. It was deep, it was wide. I really enjoyed this version. this was excellent. But nonetheless, I could still tell there was a difference in the mids and the highs and the resolution compared to when I had the F15s on their own. And I was reminded of this, of how vibration control is important when I got the Macarius. When I got to experience the Mako Macarius speakers, which are very similar, but you see that they're using a sensitive full range driver, just like I was, a better one. But it's also sensitive to current flow, meaning it doesn't work with high current amps, but it's also sensitive to vibrations. The vibrations from this W15, if it's in the same baffle, you have to find ways to mitigate that vibration so it doesn't hurt the full range driver. Now, also thinking for bass, I was like, maybe I should remember of how I did it with Verity and a set of rails. The rail subwoofers were positioned in the corner of the room, and Verity speakers have rear-firing bass woofers that help your room walls in the back corners act as giant bass horns. And this is something Klipsch has been doing also for generations. And this was one of my experiences a while back where I got the most satisfying bass in my room. So I decided, what if I could leverage the W15s in a similar way? Because when I look at Verity Audio, they don't just have these speakers, right? They have a line of speakers that go up into the crazy close to $1 million system. Yeah, when I say close to $1 million system, I mean this, the Monsalvat system. Now, if you look closely, you have the towers in the front that handle the mids and the highs. And in the back, in the corners of the room, you have these big, giant towers that are there. In each of those cylinders, I believe, is a 12 or a 15-inch bass driver. And as you can see, there's 3 big amplifiers in the front. These amplifiers are split between amplifiers that run the big bass drivers in the back, which I think in this setup, you have 2 amplifiers, one for each of the bass towers in the back of the room that are using the room as bass horns. And I think you have 1 amplifier in this case that is driving the towers in the front. Okay, so my idea, not James, I love James, but the idea was, okay, I'm separating my W15s from the F15s. That's right. I rebuilt another pair of baffles so that the F15s were on their own, and I applied all the knowledge that I discovered over time to maximize the F15's performance. I gave them a little bit of a shallow horn. Thank you, Mako Macarius, for teaching me that horn works really well with these drivers. As you can see now, I have the W15s in the corner of the rooms, and they're sitting on top of a high-density foam also so that they don't rattle with the concrete because I'm using a concrete floor. And the result is, how is it?
It's jaw-dropping, seriously. I was not expecting this. Not even close, man.
Yeah, so that was Thomas's reaction when he first heard my system, which was a few months back. He was very, very impressed. And then he asked me, could I come back and make a video? And let me bring Mr. Kanta, my audio sommelier. I said, sure. And him and Mr. Kanta actually came back. And man, we had a fun day. To go check out his video, I'm going to link it down in the description. And it's always very fascinating to me when I look at the feedback of people's comments on YouTube videos, because people want to know like what the secret is. How can you get there? But for me to actually explain how to get there, I got to explain 20 different elements. To really get there, it's not one thing. It's not doing one thing super amazingly well. It's actually 20 little things that you need to have an open mind about. So it was funny because when he heard that I had put in a purple fuse into my DAC, like the reaction was, oh, come on, you believe in that stuff? I'm like, well, yeah. So out of the 20 things, like audiophiles that want to know how to get to this level without spending the same price as a car or a house, well, you need to be open-minded to these 20 things, because you might love the first 8 things that I'm going to recommend and suggest, but then you'll absolutely hate the next 3 things, and it'll even make you angry because it might even go against what you think is true from your journey so far. And then from there, you're not even going to listen to the last 8 things or 9 things that are left to explain, because 2 or 3 of those things went against what your current beliefs are. Anyways, point here is you got to keep an open mind. You want to reach something, you got to keep an open mind to trying, even if it goes against what you've always believed to be true up until now. Anyways, I learned that like the hard way a long time ago, and ever since then, I learned a lot more. Anyway, let me go back just a little bit. So before building these baffles with these speakers, I woke up one morning and something happened. Whoa, no, this didn't happen. James, this happened. I decided I wanted to try and see what the Dolby Atmos effect could be if I used it on my open baffles at the time. Now, this was before I built the current set where I separated the W15s from the F15s. But I learned that there's something to the sound that was shooting up because there was a sweet spot, guys. And when I nailed it, it made my soundstage unbelievable. But it was such a fine sweet spot, it was difficult. Anyways, check out the link in the description. I just showed you the thumbnail. Go check it out. But a couple days later, I got an email. I got an email from Steve at Deckware. And he sent me this picture. And he was like, ha. It's like, look what the audio gods showed me in my dream. And that lit up a light bulb in my head. So I'm like, okay, let me try it. So of course I tried it with the Fast 8, like lazy, but angle was wrong. Soundstage was terrible like this. It didn't work out. I think the angle was not, it wasn't strong enough. It was just a little bit laid back. So I'm like, maybe it's the concrete. Let me put a hi-fi pillow underneath. Does it work? What about on top? Kind of, maybe. No, it sucked. It really did. So then I remembered I made broccoli baffles. Okay, no, these broccoli baffles. I didn't like them. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to use these. I'm going to cut them up. And I'm actually going to set them up so that I can see how they sound like when they're down on an angle. And I did. I'm going to show you the picture in a few seconds. But the sound, when I first tried it the first time with these, the tonality was off. I mean, the low end wasn't there. The highs were a little bit harsh. That being said, it wasn't extremely bad. But what I got was I got to experience the potential of the soundstage when a speaker driver is facing more upwards than forward, just like I got an idea from experimenting with the up-firing drivers like the Dolby Atmos. Have a listen. Now that my curiosity was piqued from hearing that soundstage, all right, time to build something that makes a little bit more sense. And I wanted to do it with the F8 Fast 8s. And here we go. I decided to make 3 foot wide, angled on the edges, set them up in the room, set them at the angle that Steve recommended, which was around 39 degrees, and whoa. And then Steve sent me this clip of his version, and you can see he's got AMT tweeters on there. Now you can see the guy in the middle is just zenned out into the zone, and the guy sitting on the floor can't believe what he's hearing. So anyways, then I decided to play a joke on my wife where I added these wings and this aluminum foil on top. But the joke ended up being on me because that actually made the highs and the details sparkle a bit, like there was some kind of reflection coming off. So I'm like, okay, time to go the Steve route again and add tweeters. So I added the soft dome tweeters. They sounded really good with the soft dome tweeters. I also experimenting with EMTs, tried a bullet horn. But anyways, so this is where I'm at now in my journey. I'm using these Ladybug with up-firing angles. Now, they're not right yet. They're not right. They don't have the tonality. They don't have the energy and the space that the F15s do on my front-firing baffles. That being said, this was just the first few tests. I am now going to make something either with a Fast 15 or an F18, or heck, maybe even a coaxial driver, like maybe something from La Dolce Audio, something like that. Because I see the success of the ABX baffles, the LDA baffles. And man, if I could use that driver in a Ladybug configuration to get the soundstage of the Ladybugs, combined with the resolution, dynamic, speed, and tonality that a coax can give, and I'm thinking maybe I could do something with that. Don't get me wrong. Maybe first I should build the ABX baffles and see what it's about. Stay tuned.